Hello everyone, I'm Sophie Hayward, I'm a Guardian journalist and I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's special lunchtime talk. Could I ask you, ironically enough, to make sure your mobile phones are switched to silent, but you don't have to turn them off because there is a hashtag RSA Coupland if you want to get involved in the discussion on Twitter. So feel free to tweet, but if you could turn them to silent, that would be great. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce this afternoon's special guest speaker. Douglas Coupland is a novelist, visual artist and designer and is widely regarded as one of the world's best chroniclers of the contemporary zeitgeist. His first novel in 1991 was Generation X, Tales for an Accelerated Culture. He has since published 13 novels, a collection of short stories, 7 works of non-fiction, and a number of dramatic works and screenplays for films and television. His latest book is the third in the Visual Edition's Writers in Residence series, and it details his discoveries from inside the French telecommunications giant Alcatel Lucent. We're absolutely delighted to have you here with us today, so without further ado, please welcome me in join me in welcoming Douglas Coupland.
Oh, Sophie, thanks very much. That was really very generous. Well, welcome to the RSA, in this beautiful, beautiful room here. And I was looking around earlier and wondering what would the 21st century equivalent of this sort of room be. And all I could think of is that if you took that panel there and put Helvetica over top it, it would look like a Peter Saville album cover from the 80s. I am here partially because Alain de Botton, and who I've actually never met, we've only emailed and spoken on the phone. He did a book a few years back. He went to Heathrow Airport for a week, and he lived and ate and slept and did everything there. And he did a book called A Week at the Airport, which is more of a jumping off point for musings on the human condition. And so that's where he came up with the idea of taking people who are largely fiction writers and inserting them into places where you might not normally go. Why kittens? Sir Tim Berners-Lee was doing an interview, and they said, Sir Tim, is there anything about the internet that actually surprises you? And he said, yes, kittens. Alain suggested I go to this company called Alcatel Lucent, and like yourselves, you're probably saying, what on earth is that? Why would anyone want to go there? I mean, and look at their logo. It's like a protein molecule on a purple sphere or something. I knew nothing about it. Who are they? Where are they from? What do they do? Alcatel, the word itself is sort of after 150 years, it's what remained of a consortium of French manufacturers and telecommunications companies. Lucent is an American company that used to be a part of Bell Telephone before it was taken apart in the 80s during an antitrust suit. And Lucent, one of the companies that spun off, has as its legacy Bell Laboratories, who basically invented the 20th century there at their facilities. Alcatel-Lucent, basically, they think of themselves as the plumbers of the electronic and the information world. They build and make optical fiber. They maintain the systems. They're everywhere. At the time of writing, they were the 463rd largest company on Earth. They are currently the 505th largest company on Earth. But unlike most companies ahead of them, if they were to vanish tomorrow, our whole world would come to a stop, which is sort of strange. That's in New Jersey, and that's their corporate mothership. It was originally built in the 1940s. The American government thought it was the telephone infrastructure was so important to national welfare that it hadn't given to one company only, which was Bell. And then in 1981, 82, I believe they built this addition to the research laboratories, but they also have research labs like all over the planet. And so the first place I went to was New Jersey. And it was a very, very strange gray day. I got off the bus and I felt like I'd just been time traveling back 30 years in the past. That's a Telestar satellite they have in the lobby there. And this is kind of what I was expecting when I went there. This is not a photo by the talented Olivia Arthur, who took photos for the book. This is just a few things I found off the internet. That's Peggy from accounting. And that's Jared. He doesn't like being photographed. I found these online again. I kind of went in expecting this reality. And that's Linda. And that's the data input department. And this is actually what I wanted to use as the cover of the book. This is a photograph of a drywall that someone had in their office, and their children came in and drew on it. It was strange. The light bulbs didn't work. The place wasn't vacuumed. No one actually had an office. Everyone just sort of migrated from place to place within the building. And there was this air of time having stopped. And I mean, I'm not a business writer, I'm not a technical writer, but I think what happened with Alcatel Lucent, there's this thing, we all know about the tech crash, but there was also the great, I think it was called the overcapacity bubble, which is when a whole bunch of companies in the late 1990s, Northern Telecom from Canada actually being the largest one of them, they built massive freeway systems in an era when they didn't even have horse and buggies. And then they looked at the profit they were going to make down the road by shipping information along these wires, and they put that on the books as their assets. And it all just collapsed. And apparently it was a bigger bust than the tech bust. It was $2 trillion, I think. Maybe Sophie will know more about that afterwards. So it's a spooky place. It's lost in time. This is the hallway. It's a quarter mile long. I'm only partially along there. And Mervyn Kelly, who is the originator of Bell Laboratories, made them specifically long and thin. So it forced people to talk to each other down the hallways and across the hallways. This hallway is empty. A lot of the hallways would be filled with liquid helium canisters, and it was kind of sexy. This is an apple tree out in the courtyard area, which was made from a sapling from the same apple tree that dropped an apple on Newton. So it's like a celebrity apple tree. Well, it's actually like a child of celebrity tree. So it probably has a drugs problem, getting all sorts of trouble. Okay, I call this, this is in the lobby, a facility for registering Mormon sister wives when they enter the building. And this is a whiteboard. Whiteboards are everywhere, and physicists just love them. My nephew, who's 18, he's in the physics track, and for Christmas, all he wanted was a whiteboard. And he got one, and like they're available at Staples, right, 1995. It's like, it's a whiteboard, it's my whiteboard. They're everywhere. It's kind of like it's a Rosetta Stone. It's another language. I don't quite understand anything that's going on that board. Mathematicians, however, like chalkboards. Go figure. And that just puts you in a good mood. And this is basically what it seems to boil down to. Wires, 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 copper and glass. And this is from the internet. These are some guys that were working there, I think, in the 1980s. And I'm showing these just to give you a feel for like, the space itself. There's no sort of overall thrust here. An interesting thing about technological environments, whether it's there in Silicon Valley or anywhere else, there's a general sort of disinterest in the physical world itself, whether it's clothing, your own clothing, or the environments that you're in. An interesting thing about technicians is if you ask them to prognosticate about the future of absolutely anything, like what's the future of, they just stop. They say, I will not predict the future, period. And the other thing that they won't do is, or if they do, they don't talk about it, thinking about the intended or unintended side effects of the technologies that they're actually working on. And that's something we'll come back to. Now, the company is divided into past, present, and future. And New Jersey is certainly the past. Its legacy, It's seen much better days. I think its stock went from $87 to $2, and it still seems to sort of hover between $1 or $2. Hang on. And so this is another facility that they have. This is called Holmdel. And it was built in the early 60s out of astonishing amounts of money. And that's the water tank out front. It's shaped like a transistor, which was invented there at Bell Laboratories. And this is Holmdel in New Jersey. It was at one point, it had the largest curtain wall, glass curtain wall on Earth. You can see the long length there. And after it spent a lot of time in New Jersey, I had this experience that happened. It's going to be a short reading from the book here. This is silence, isn't it? But it's not an awkward silence. Okay, here. So we're driving back from another facility, and suddenly I look over and I see this building here. And I'm with this guy, Gary Feldman, who's a higher up in the company. And like, Gary, stop the car. I can't believe it. It's like Holmdel. And the legendarily defunct Holmdel Bell Labs. And I hadn't realized it was so close, and I hadn't scheduled time for a visit. The Bell Labs Holmdel complex functioned for 46 years as an R&D facility, initially for the Bell system. The center of the 472-acre campus is an Aero-Saarinen designed structure that served as home to over 6,000 engineers and researchers. Now, Gary, you've got to drive in there. Doug, there's a gate. We can't do it. Yes, we can. There's enough room there. We can squeak the car through there. So we drive into the 472-acre campus, which has been mothballed for the last 6 years, and weeds are growing out through the pavement, and hundreds of surly and strangely entitled Canada geese hiss at us as we pass them at 0.1 miles an hour, and a small herd of white-tailed deer gambols off into the rear parking lot. Inside the building, dead tropical plants inhabit the central atrium. I wouldn't be surprised if I find out a rusted Chernobyl carousel, or maybe Charlton Heston with a 3-day beard rounding a corner to spray a zombie apocalypse with a sawed-off shotgun. Gary, oh my God, this building, it's like a facility where they perform alien autopsies. And Gary, is sad. It really was another era. I mean, God, imagine Richard Nixon arriving in a helicopter in the front lawn in front of that weird water tower. And then they escort him into the building, and they show him the alien corpse, and before anyone can stop Nixon, he reaches over, grabs its liver, and eats it. Doug, it's time to go. As he leads me away, I feel like I've escaped something. Indiana Jones escaping a mummy attack, or that big rock ball thingy rolling down the path. And I look at the building behind me as Gary drives away, and I'm whacked with a potent blast of realization. The 20th century is over. Not only is it over, it's actually history, leaving us all in a new historical epoch with rules that would baffle the old regime. The sun is setting. Cliché, but it is. It's truly setting. It's casting a glow on what was the world's largest mirror wall when it was built, soon to be demolished and converted into a housing development. I asked Feldman, what he thinks of technological determinism, and his answer is instant. It's monstrous. I couldn't disagree with it more. Well, why is that? Because when we make our tools, they don't necessarily make us. We use these tools to make something better than ourselves. We use them to make art. I like his point of view. He tells me his wife is an artist. That explains it further. And I catch a final glimpse of the Holmdel building. It's massive. Its flat curtain walls remind me of one of the World Trade Centers lying on its side. Feldman and I briefly talk about where we were on 9/11, but I'm tired and I'm not feeling too conversational, and we return to the Highway 287 and I fall silent and I think back to the 10th anniversary coverage of 9/11. And what struck me about is that in 2001, the people in New York City's sidewalk had no iPhones with which to record the events of the day. And history will maybe look back on 9/11 as the last underdocumented mega event in human history. That is before the internet went inside everyone's head and laid 7 billion eggs. But aside from the absence of smartphone cameras, the people in streets of 2001 look pretty much identical to those people here in September 2011 or 12 or 13 or 14. The clothes, the hair, the cars. And I mention this because in the past decade, we appear to have entered a universe in which all eras coexist at once. No particular style or look now dominates our culture. We inhabit a state of timelessness given to us at courtesy of the internet. Steampunk coexists with disco, coexists with the 1980s and everything else in the internet universe. And if you went to a 2014 nostalgia party in the year 2034, what would you wear that would possibly say 2014? But we actually solved that in a green room a few minutes ago. You would dress as a hipster. And God, this new era, technology, all this new technology, and thank you, Internet, I think. The zeitgeist of the 21st century is that we have a lot of zeit, but not much geist. And I am appalled that I wrote that sentence. But it's true, there's something emotionally sparse about the present era. And the world just keeps spinning faster and faster. Optical fibers carry 40 billion phone calls at once, and soon 10 terabits per second. And I want my Dexter season 4, and I want it now. And that's what's driving all this. We want it all now. And on top of that, right now, it feels like kind of like we're being chased by monsters. That's the past. Let's go into the present. So here's what happened. I began writing the book, and I get a call from Rogers. And Rogers is the main, well, one of the largest, if not the largest telecom provider in Canada. And it's a friend. And so what's up? And well, Doug, we have to put these 100-foot towers in, actually in your neighborhood. And we're wondering if there's any way that we can turn them into art. And now here, the issue with telephone towers is that they're just ugly and they're art-proof and they're revolting. And they were going to put these 100-foot towers along the freeway not far from the house where I lived. And they tried to sort of sneak it through council as item number 17 right after, repaving the parking lot at the DMV. And everyone's like, what? 100-foot tower? And then everyone just went crazy. It was like soccer moms against cancer, like protesting against it. And they just sort of like running from the building with bricks being thrown at them. And they tried to get the towers going through. And the term for people who are afraid of cell phone towers is tinfoil heads. That is your word for the day. And the thing about, you should know this, when your phone gets really hot, it's because you're far away from a tower. And the radiation that you're getting from the cell phone tower is actually not from the tower, it's coming your phone itself. And the further you are away from the tower, the hotter it gets and the more radiation you're receiving. This stuff here, this is called GAC. And this is the GAC that people put up on the sides of anything and everything. And the weird thing about GAC is that it's the only things we design as human beings. They're 100% functional and yet still look repulsive. So I simultaneously got a call from the mayor of Vancouver, Gregor, and he's like, Doug, there's so much GAC on the streets of the city, it's like appalling. And is there anything we can do to maybe get rid of the GAC and maybe standardize things? I thought, well, let me think of it. And so this is a tower in Vancouver, and it's called the Tampon for obvious reasons. And this was an attempt by the local telecom system to beautify their tower. And then they made this pine box at the bottom that is made in wood that's like so bad, it's the stuff they use on what do you call it, like pallets at IKEA. Okay, so, and there it is again, gorgeous. And I'm not doing a very good job at selling Vancouver here, am I? That's like the only unattractive block in the entire city. Please come visit and bring your tourist dollars with you.